Okay, welcome students to our next lesson in equations and inequalities. In this lesson we're solving equations with two-step equations, and you can see we have this same standard focus here. And in a second when I ask you to pause, I'm just going to have you write down the 7EE4A and 8EE7B are those standards we're focused on, and we'll reference the footnote if we ever need that full standard. Yeah, I hear you laughing on the other side. It's important to read what we're supposed to learn. So pause right now and copy down these 2 pages. Okay, welcome back, students. So our essential question is how do we solve two-step equations? And we are focusing or recycling what we just learned on the previous lesson. We're just putting two of them together. And what we're about to learn is there is a sequence we have to use in order to solve equations. In fact, this is exactly the same way that you would have to solve an expression, simplify an expression using the order of operations. We have to use the order of operations to get the correct answer. What we're learning is a sequence that we have to follow to get the correct answer for equations. And I won't confuse you on this, but it does actually come from the order of operations backwards. But again, if that just is going to blow your mind, we can learn this as a different sequence for equations. So step one is we're removing our additive inverse. And I'm going to mark an A usually when I do the additive inverse step. And remember, what is an additive inverse? It's the you thought I was going to tell you the answer. Remember, I don't do that. I don't want to ruin that learning experience. So if you do not know what an additive inverse, or you think you know what it is, remember, that means go learn it. Go find out what it is. And while you're there, look up multiplicative inverse as well. And we're going to use the letter M whenever we use the multiplicative inverse step. So the first thing we have to get rid of when we only have two operations in here is the additive inverse, and then we remove the multiplicative inverse. And the skill I use to help me with figuring out which one I need to do the additive inverse on is I find which one is multiplying or dividing first. And in this problem, the 7 is multiplying the x, which means I cannot touch that until the second step when I have to use the multiplicative inverse. So I'm focused on this -4 first. What is the additive inverse of -4? Yeah, you're right, it's +4. And 17 plus 4 is 21. We bring down the equal sign, and that adds the 0. So just like we've learned in other lessons, when we don't use something, we bring it straight down. And that was our additive inverse step. And now the second step, we're using the multiplicative inverse to get rid of the 7, and I'm going to show it with our reciprocal of 1/7. Haha, you've heard what the answer is now. We can reduce the 7 and the 21. Those reduced by 7 makes our math really easy. The other side is just to the 3. So again, the sequence we're learning here in these two-step equations is we have to do the additive inverse, and then we do the multiplicative inverse. And our answer for this was x equals 3. And my corny little math joke that you guys all know, yeah, I love to tell, is we can only do these problems in the morning. You're not laughing. Okay, well, they're morning problems because they are AM problems. I know. They pay me to be your math teacher, not a comedian. So I'm going to click over on the next two slides, and if you could pause here and copy them down. Awesome, welcome back. So I'm going to slide this one more slide this way so I can show the steps as I'm solving these problems. So in problem 1, we draw our vertical line on the equal sign. And the 1/5 is multiplying the x, which means I have to get rid of this -12 in the first step. The additive inverse of -12. Yes, that's +12. And if I write it on the left, I have to be fair and write it on the right. And we bring stuff straight down if we haven't used it. 1/5 x plus 0 is 1/5 x. Now that was my A step. Now we're on the multiplicative inverse step, and the multiplicative inverse of 1/5 is 5/1. It's just the reciprocal. And that's just multiplication there. And I don't remember my multiples of 32, so I'm going to do some math over here. And we got the answer of 160. So x equals 160. Again, we have to do the additive inverse in the first step, and then multiplicative inverse in the second. Now problem 2 I have here, because it does look like a one-step problem, but in fact it is 2 steps, and it's because of that minus t that's in there. So I'm going to utilize something we've learned in our previous lessons just for the visual effect. I'm going to rewrite this as an addition problem, so we could write 9 plus negative t equals negative 34. And now we're going to start solving our problem here. We need our additive inverse first, which is that 9. The additive inverse is minus 9. We get, same sides, add and keep. We're going to keep that. We get this 3 there. We add it. We get negative 43. Excellent. We bring down our negative t. Now, although we have the t by itself, visually it looks that way, that negative is there. And remember, that is in fact the invisible 1. And that's not just a 1, it's a negative 1. So we have to get rid of that because we don't want an answer for a negative t. We need the answer for a positive variable. So what is the reciprocal of this negative 1? It's negative 1 over 1. And again, if you have any questions on these lectures, remember, that's what this notes section over here is for, this question section. You should write a question down, and I'll try and help answer it in class. So a negative times a negative is a positive 43. So that is a challenging problem that some students get tripped up on because they don't pay attention to that minus sign on the t there. Now, number 3 is kind of showing us what's going to happen in our future. And if you remember from our previous lessons, we've already learned how to use the distributive property, and then we combine our like terms. Well, the full sequence for solving equations and inequalities is using all of those steps together. These AMs we just learned, but the distributive and like terms first. So in this one, there is no distributive, so we should probably clean up our like terms. And 2x is like 2x, because they have the same variable with the same exponent. So we're going to write 2x plus 2x, which is 4x minus 5 equals negative 9. And now we've turned it into a 2-step problem. Bring down the 4x, bring down the equals, multiplicative inverse is 1/4. And a negative times a positive is a negative. And that reduces to 1. So the answer for this is x equals negative 1. So that was just starting to show us what's going to happen in our future lessons here. We have to combine our like terms first. And now we have a word problem here, and Drew is going camping in our wonderful Hope Valley area, the Caples Lake down there, and he's got a camping trip going on, and we should use our marking the text skills. So in math, unfortunately, we don't really care where he's going. We care about the cost of his trip. So his trip's going to cost $185.75. So I'm going to go ahead and start writing this down just to kind of model how we're going to do it from left to right. So we have $185.75. That's his total trip cost. He's paid. If he's paid money, is that a positive or a negative in our math? Yeah, that's going to be a positive, and he paid $45.75 already. So we write $45.75. And we'll save an additional, well, I love additional because that kind of tells me that means plus sign right there, $17.50 per week. Well, I don't know how many weeks it is. Remember, when we have that question of we don't know what it is, that's when we've actually discovered the variable. It's the number of weeks. So we're going to write 17.5W. Oh, look, we've created an equation to solve rather than use guess and check. This is a great way to do it. So we're going to draw a vertical line, and we're going to have to figure out which one is the additive inverse. We need to get rid of 45.75 first. And that's because the 17.5 is performing multiplication, and I'm lining up my place values here. My equal sign is going to come down. Those are zeros. Those are zeros. That's another 0, but we need that decimal point. So we got a 0, we got a 4, we got 140 there, equals 17.5 W. Excellent job. And now we need to divide by that 17.5, which is the multiplicative inverse. And again, you could write it this way. It's just when we're using decimals, many students like to use the division sign instead and write it this way. So I like to interchange. I use this a lot on decimals. So now we have to divide 140 by 17.5. No, we don't get to use the calculator. We got to practice those long division skills. moving our decimal point, rewriting our numbers here. That doesn't go into that. 0, 0, 0. Oh, man. I'm going to hypothesize 8. Remember, we use guess and check on long division. What do you know? It is 8. So how many weeks is Drew going to have to save money for to go on this camping trip? It's 8 weeks. And we should actually be able to write that down. So I want you to actually write that down as the answer. We have to know how to translate our answers into sentences. He will save for 8 weeks. Really, I should have put Drew, but that's a great sentence to describe our answer. Well, thank you, students, again for this video lecture, and we'll write our summaries in class. Have a great time.